Kafka Hibino grew up dreaming of being him. He wanted to fight alongside the Huz and take down kaiju each and every day, living the happiest life he could. Him and Mina promised that they would stand together on the battlefield, side by side, protecting humanity. Kafka had the shonen protagonist blood coursing through his veins, and so she became captain of the Kaiju Defense Force's 3rd Division, whilst he rotted away in his 1-bedroom apartment alone, eating pot noodles and cleaning up kaiju corpses at 32 years old.
Real talk, you gotta be ashamed of yourself.
That's right, Kafka was the definition of washed. But here's the thing, Mina also hated it. She might have been the strongest prodigy in the country, but she was just as lonely as Kafka. It looked like their childhood dream could never happen. But then, something made it possible. The application age limit of the Defense Force was raised to 33. Kafka had one last chance. But how could Unk possibly get in? Well, enter this lil guy. After risking his life to save Ichikawa, Kafka found himself in hospital when a certain parasitic kaiju appeared. What happened next would change everything. But this was also the start of Kafka's biggest curse and his greatest blessing. His body wasn't just infected, it was chosen. The little guy wasn't just some random bug, it carried the grudge of samurai warriors from centuries prior who died fighting kaiju, and it saw Kafka as the perfect host to finish their fight. And so he finally had his chance to live out his dreams of being a shonen protagonist. Thus the two bolted out of the hospital, but that's when Kafka's instincts went off. He felt a yoju nearby, but instead of running, he sprinted straight towards it because a kid's life was on the line. And yet that was just the beginning, because Kafka had already begun to somewhat understand and control this new power. He could even transform just select parts of his body at a time in order to help keep his identity as the most wanted Kaiju number 8 a secret. In spite of this, bro was still pretty ass during the exams, being the first person ever to not draw any significant power from the Defense Force suits. He still got his time to shine though, because when Kaiju number 9 arrived and whipped out the Edo Tensei on nearby dead Honju, which went straight for Kikoro, Kafka locked in. He instantly transformed again, clapped the Honju before backup even arrived, and saved Kikoro's life on the spot. But instead of flexing, he just begged her to keep it all a secret. Nonetheless, what mattered was that bro got invited to be part of the team. Kafka was officially a Defense Force member and one step closer to his dream. As a result, just 2 months later, bro's flexing about finally unlocking a grand total of 1% of his combat suit's power.
This is trash!
But this is the beauty of Kafka. He never quits. Like I said, he's a shonen protagonist after all, and so when Kaiju number 9 appears, once again, Kafka is forced to transform and save the day, decapitating other kaijus with just a single strike. Even managed to beat up number 9 until his core was exposed, putting an early end to the story, had it not been for the Defense Force arriving, meaning Kafka had to leave, because in their eyes he wasn't a hero, he's a monster, and if they connected the dots, it would be over for him. To make things worse, Vice Captain Hoshina stepped into battle. Luckily, Kafka's Kaiju number 8 form gives him the power to barely avoid getting cooked and escape without revealing his true identity. But one thing is clear, Kafka cannot go on like this. Hiding his identity can only hold him back. If he wants to achieve his dream, he's got to not only get stronger, but braver. Because currently, he's nothing more than a clumsy but sometimes dependable friend. Whereas in reality, he has the potential to become the most powerful kaiju that has ever lived. After all, even in his current base form, Kafka is at a Fortitude level of 9.8, the highest of all recorded kaiju. Something we get to see firsthand when a Yoju nuke appears overhead made from fused wyverns. Nonetheless, Kafka reveals himself publicly in order to save the city. Bro literally stopped a living nuke before it erased every Defense Force officer around. When Kafka swung, the energy alone caused a mini earthquake. And then came the punch. One hit and he yeeted a city block sized kaiju bomb straight into the stratosphere. The force was so insane that the blob detonated mid-air, lighting up the sky, and even that explosion still shredded parts of the city below, forcing the Defense Force to up their shield to the max. And yet Kafka just stood there, because he didn't even get a thank you. Instead, the 3rd Division rolled up and Mina herself put him into custody. What came next was a true monster. A kaiju that you could say has had one too many gamer subs. I myself drink this on the daily. In fact, I wrote the script for this very video using gamer subs. Well, actually, I used a keyboard, but I was drinking gamer subs. In fact, I've literally got some right here. So you get my point. In fact, listen here, right? Come closer. Okay. Let me tell you something. Even if we weren't partnered with Gamersubs, I would still recommend it to you. It is that good. It is the perfect way to lock in with 0 sugars and 0 calories. If you don't believe me, you can actually just go and order yourself a free sample and see for yourself. Also, if you use code ABD at checkout, you'll be greatly supporting the channel, and so it's pretty much a dub for us both. Let me know what you think. Thank you for your time, and let's continue with the video. Because when he was detained at Defense Force headquarters, Kafka finally came face to face with the Director General himself, Isao Shinomiya, the strongest man alive and Kikaru's father. He tried to plead with him, insisting that he was a human, that he wasn't just another monster, but Isao didn't buy a word of it. He shot Kafka, who caught the bullets with his bare hand, which was all the confirmation Isao needed to tear blood straight from Kafka's body and declare him a kaiju. And so Isao came back fully suited up with the Kaiju Weapon 2, a battlesuit built from the remains of Kaiju No. 2 itself, one of the most powerful Dai Kaiju in history. With it, Isao's presence alone felt like a Dai Kaiju, and it showed. Kafka couldn't even react before his leg was sliced clean off, his body smashed around like a ragdoll. Bro was finished. But that's when the switch flipped. Kafka transformed and Kaiju No. 8 went berserk. Inside his own body, Kafka faced the little guy who only had one thing on his mind: kill Isao. Kill Kaiju. Thus, Kafka lost control. His body moved with terrifying precision, faster and sharper than anything he had shown in his base form. His insane regeneration meant that he could go on the offensive without having to worry about leaving himself open for the counter, as he would simply mutilate his own body to dodge what came his way. The fists of No. 8 and Isao clashing was enough to destroy the extra fortified walls of the shelter that were built to withstand the power of a Fortitude Level 10 Kaiju. And so, whether he meant it or not, Kafka had reached a level where he was one attack away from killing the strongest Defense Force soldier in history. But for Kafka, this wasn't power, it was horror. He was forced to watch as his body tried to kill Kikaru's father right in front of her. However, his shonen protagonist promise kicked in, giving Kafka just enough willpower to punch himself in the heart and shut down his body. Therefore, the Defense Force made a decision. If they couldn't destroy Kaiju No. 8, why not use him? Little did they realize though that this wouldn't be the last time we saw Kafka go berserk. However, if he wanted to keep his life, Kafka had to prove his worth. In order to do that, Bro was thrown into the 1st Division alongside Gen Narumi. By combining the strongest kaiju in history with Japan's strongest anti-kaiju squad, it should mean that any and all cataclysms will be dealt with. Well, let's see how that goes, shall we? Because for the first time, Kafka realized just how fragile his humanity really was. He no longer felt in control of his own body. He was too scared to unleash the lil guy, and so he stuck to partial transformations. Anytime he even thought about letting No. 8 out, his body would just lock up. Even when Kikaru was relying on Kafka's power against Kaiju No. 9, he simply couldn't transform. He was too afraid of killing her. But she called him out on it. Kikaru reminded him that he wasn't alone, that the whole point of the Defense Force, of their promise, of their bonds, was that they would fight together. And this helped Kafka realize that he shouldn't just trust himself, but his friends in being able to handle themselves, even against him. And so he embraced the risk, transformed fully into Kaiju No. 8 yet again, absolutely obliterated No. 9's new body. Unfortunately though, it wasn't enough, as Bro popped up elsewhere and killed General Isao, combining with his body. A failure of this magnitude forced Kafka to lock in and level up. But I don't think even he knew what was waiting for him, because Kafka's Kaijification was progressing at a rapid rate. Parts of his body wouldn't even return to human anymore, and the more he transformed going forward, the more he risked the possibility of never reverting back to human again. In spite of this risk, it didn't stop Kafka from fighting, which is when he began training with the very man that he faced in battle all that time ago, Vice Captain Hoshino. In order to help Kafka shorten the time he spent in his kaiju form and to stop him from losing his humanity, Hoshino began instructing him the squadron-style combat technique, a hand-to-hand fighting style perfected by none other than the Director General Isao Shinomiya himself. This training was, of course, not easy. Bro was being humbled left, right, and center, day in, day out, even despite being stronger as a human than he'd ever been before. But you should know by now that Kafka ain't ever gonna give up. However, that's when he saw it. The ghost of a strange samurai staring directly at him. But more on that crazy revelation later though, as it gives Kafka his craziest and strongest transformation yet. Because before then, Kaiju number 9 finally made its move. The great cataclysm had begun. When the second wave hit and the Daikaiju started closing in, Kafka was kept back as the 1st Division's secret weapon, watching Mina snipe monsters from miles away like it was nothing. But when Kaiju number 13 showed up and nearly crushed his squadmate Rin, Kafka couldn't stand by any longer. He transformed, putting his training to good use. Number 13 augmented its muscles, raising its fortitude level to a whopping 9.2, ready to unleash hell upon Kafka. In the blink of an eye, the monster exploded towards Kaiju number 8, but bro just stopped the punch with one hand. He didn't even have to move a single muscle fiber in his body, ultimately landing a single strike that killed Kaiju number 13 on impact. There was no time to celebrate this though. First, Kafka felt inferior to Mina as she soloed Kaiju number 14, but secondly, number 9 made its appearance. Kafka immediately transformed yet again, swearing he wouldn't let what happened to Isao happen to Mina, not after everything that they had promised together. But number 9 knew exactly how to break Kafka, and so the third wave was unleashed across Tokyo as an army of Daikaiju erupted all at once, spreading destruction across the city. In spite of this, Kafka declared war on them all, one by one. He tore through the Daikaiju, but his humanity was also his weakness. They were purposefully going after the lives of civilians and officers, which slowed Kafka down from reaching Mina, meaning number 9 was able to capture her and begin absorbing her, all with the end goal of turning the human world into one built for the kaiju. That was, at least, until Kafka burst in, severing the arm of number 9 and saving Mina before she came one with him. From there, my guy unleashed a punch so devastating that the shockwaves alone rattled the entire city, as the clash between him and number 9 was pushing the very infrastructure of Tokyo to its breaking point. However, despite the overwhelming growth in power, Kaiju number 9 thought that he could hit Kafka with an Uno reverse. After all, it's all well and good that he learned Isao's squadron style, but number 9 had absorbed Isao, and so he was a master of it because of that. But here's the thing, despite what number 9 thought, he wasn't him. Hoshino had already seen this moment coming. That's why he drilled Kafka in his own family's hidden techniques as well, refining the squadron style into something new, something number 9 couldn't predict. Thus, Kafka didn't just match Isao, he surpassed him. And for the first time, he struck Kaiju number 9 with a move it couldn't see coming. This strike was so powerful that number 9 had to compress its entire shield around its core to keep itself from dying there and then. Nonetheless, 9 retaliated by transforming. Kafka was no longer facing just one of the strongest kaiju ever, but 2 of them, as Isao's numbers weapon manifested itself as a second head. And so Kafka was left with no choice. It was time to activate his ace even deeper in the hole. It was the return of his Berserk mode, the very same form that had once overwhelmed General Isao, only this time it was under his control. The raw output of this transformation wasn't just his old 9.8 anymore, it was breaking into Fortitude Level 10 territory. But this form came with a price. Kafka only had 1 minute in this state before the little guy would drag him under completely and go on a killing spree. Every second risked him sinking into the abyss and never returning to human again. That didn't matter for now though. Kafka had sworn to Mina, to Isao, and to himself that he would fight as a human no matter the cost. Thus, with his time limit ticking, he went all in and made number 9 use his shield, which Mina was able to destroy, giving Kafka free reign to finish the job. However, Kaiju number 2 was also able to create a last-ditch shield, albeit what little remained of Isao's willpower suppressed it. And so Kafka unleashed his ultimate technique, variant number 6, God of Thunder. The attack tore through number 9's core in a blast of unstoppable force, proving that Kaiju number 8's true nature had always been to kill kaiju. However, whilst Kafka thought he finally did enough to kill the most dangerous kaiju of them all, he couldn't have been more wrong, as number 9 took him on a trip throughout history and revealed Kaiju number 8's true origins. He was looking straight into the memories of his ancestors on a battlefield centuries ago in the middle of the Mereki era. Back then, humanity didn't have railguns, kaiju suits, or numbered weapons. They had swords, spears, and a dream. Samurai squads fought tooth and nail against what would become known as the Mereki monster, a daikaiju so strong it annihilated the strongest generation of warriors. Thousands were slaughtered, including Kafka's ancestor, who had to watch his comrades get torn apart whilst being powerless to save them. But their deaths, their regret, their anger, their shame at failing to protect the people they loved lingered. That collective grudge fused into something new. Their souls gathered around Kafka's ancestor's dying heart, and from that despair, from the feeling of being nothing more than an insect, a kaiju was born. That core eventually manifested as the tiny embryo-like parasite we now know as the Lil Guy, Kaiju number 8 itself. This is why number 8 is different from all the others. It wasn't born just to destroy, it was born to fight kaiju. It's literally the will of fallen human warriors turned into a monster so that it could keep killing other monsters. That's why it cripples kaiju regeneration, why it instinctively hunts them down, and why it went out to search for Kafka. However, back in the real world, the Mereki monster re-emerged from within Kaiju number 9, sending Kafka flying, killing him. That's right, his vitals were completely undetectable, meaning he was cooked. But like a true shonen protagonist, when things seemed beyond saving, he leveled up one last time. You see, the only way to survive was to turn his own human heart into a new kaiju core. But if he did that, he would never fully return to human again. Nonetheless, he chose to do it. And what emerged was a walking apocalypse. Because Kafka's new form wasn't just strong, it was unmeasurable. The defense force literally say he was beyond Fortitude Level 10. Everyone was stunned by the aura alone. Kafka had mutated into a human kaiju hybrid unlike anything humanity had ever seen before. Remember that even at 9.8, he was already blitzing at Mach 5 to 10, one-tapping daikaiju and yeeting a city block-sized kaiju bomb into the stratosphere. That was mountain-busting nuke-tier output before his final form. To further put things into perspective, the Mereki monster, which had combined with Kaiju number 9, making it far more powerful than it was 400 years prior, was able to fire dozens of number 2's energy blasts. Even Isao had to put absolutely everything he had into firing just 2 of these off. Even Kaiju number 2 itself, the literal source of this power, couldn't use it as well as the Mereki monster was doing. The defense force confidently labeled it the most outrageous kaiju of all time, and even still, Kafka was stated to be stronger. So much so that he instantly was able to force the Mereki monster out of Kaiju number 9's body and into the real world. And so, alongside his friends and a girl, Kafka was able to live his dream using his final form, the strongest form of any kaiju ever, to put an end to a 400-year-long war, killing the Mereki monster once and for all. However, this ultimately killed Kafka as well. That was at least until Isao stepped in. Remember, number 9 had absorbed Isao along with Kaiju number 2 earlier on, and so once the trapped souls inside of the Mereki monster were released upon its death, along with the vengeful souls of Kafka's ancestors, Isao essentially used the lingering kaiju tissue inside of Kafka as a conduit, channeling his own willpower to stabilize Kafka's body. Then he literally sacrificed sacrifices his own heart, transforming Kafka's human heart into a brand new kaiju core. This single act was enough to revive him, but also make him something entirely new. He was no longer human, not a standard kaiju, but a mutation beyond classification. In spite of this, his new role in the Defense Force heading into this new era was one of analytical reports on the battlefield, putting his kaiju cleanup skills to good use. This is because if his identity as Kaiju number 8 was ever to come out publicly, his life would be in danger as other research facilities across the world are desperate to get their hands on him. After all, there will never be another kaiju like Kafka again. Now, if you enjoyed this video, it would mean the world to me if you could leave a like and subscribe, ding that notification bell, and whilst you're at it, you may as well check this video out on your screen right now. Trust me, you're gonna love it.